Today we're talking about how to pan drums properly in your mix to create the perfect space. So if you want to know how to do this, stick around after this introduction. Welcome everybody, I'm Dan Spencer and I am the Audio Sorcerer. So this is the channel where I teach you how to perfect your audio recording, mixing, and mastering skills. So before we get to the video, make sure you guys smash that like button. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell to know when a new video is coming out. So without further ado, today we are talking about how to pan drums within your mix to create that perfect space. So in this video, we're pretty much going to talk about the whole entire drum kit. I'm going to give you 5 tips that are going to show you how to do it right. Now really the 5th tip is actually a bonus tip, and make sure you stick around to the end to get that tip. And that 5th tip is actually going to be revolved around percussion, all right? So by watching this video all the way through, you're going to fully know how to pan a drum kit and your percussion instruments, okay? So you're going to know how to do it all. So before we get to all that, I do want to mention to check out audiosorcerer.com, because on that website I offer many services from audio mixing to audio mastering. I also do audio editing and also I do audio teaching, okay? And there's also a blog on that website where I offer many things that I don't teach on the YouTube channel. So if you want to learn some of those tips and techniques that I have on there within these articles, definitely feel free to subscribe, and it is free, okay? So now that is out of the way, let's get further into today's topic and let's get to our first tip. Alright, so tip number 1 is for your overheads, and they should have been recorded with a stereo pair of microphones. So we want to pan one hard left and we want to pan one hard right. Now, we don't want to do them at like 90, we don't want to do them at like 80, we want them to be 100% to the left, 100% to the right. We want that really wide spectrum for the drum kit. So if you're working with like Slate SSD5, or if you're working with like Superior Drummer, they do have a replication in there of stereo microphones for the overhead. So you're not going to have any issue working with a drum sampler, okay? So you're all good there. Now, it's likely also that you might have used stereo pair for your room microphones and you want to do exactly the same thing. Hard left and hard right for those, okay? So that is tip number 1. Alright, so tip number 2 is to use the overheads that you just panned, hard left and hard right, to discover where the instruments are within the drum kit. Okay, so we can actually discover where the instruments are within the kit, which is kind of cool after the fact. So we can figure out where the hi-hat is, where the toms are, and then typically the ride if we are miking it directly as opposed to using just the overheads to capture it, okay? Those are like the 3 instruments that we typically have to pan away from center. So what I want you to do is I want you to listen to this drum mix here. We're just going to listen to the overheads here, solo it up. And I want you to see if you can figure out where the rack tom is, where the floor tom is, and where the hi-hat is, okay? So let's give it a listen. Alright, so this one's kind of a little challenging. So I actually heard both the toms on the right hand side of the mix here. So I ended up placing the rack tom at 20 to the right and the floor tom at 60 to the right. And then I had the hi-hat at 10 to the left, because the hi-hat almost sounded like it was in the center. It was really tough to distinguish for this particular mix here, okay? So why don't we actually give a listen to the full drum mix now, and you can actually hear the toms and the hi-hat in with everything. And the idea is that now they should all sound cohesive. If you ever listen to it and you hear like the toms and the hi-hat sounding like they're separated, so like the overhead sounds separated from the direct track, then you know your panning is off, all right? So let's give it a listen. right, so that is tip number 2, listening to your overheads after they are panned hard left and right to discover where certain instruments are within them. All right, so tip number 3 is to put your kick and your snare in the center of the mix, all right? So I don't care what genre you are working with, just put it in the center, all right? Everybody's gonna be happy, and your listener is gonna be most happy. They don't really like surprises when it comes to panning of those two instruments. Just trust me on that, all right? Now, I know we can get kind of fancy when we're working with maybe like a 3-piece jazz group or maybe a blues group, but in the end, you got to think about the listener, okay? They really want those two instruments in the center, okay? They feel comfortable with them there, all right? So just leave them there and just make your listener happy, all right? So that is tip number 3. All right, so tip number 4 is, it's possible you might have a mono room microphone along with your stereo room microphones, or you might just have a mono room microphone for your recording. Now, make sure that this goes in the center of your panning, okay? It needs to be dead center, all right? Do not pan this anywhere else but center because it's going to throw off your whole entire drum balance, okay? I have not yet seen anybody do this or run into this problem before, but just in case anybody, has done it before or another engineer has ran into it, I feel like just because somebody hasn't done it before doesn't mean I shouldn't say it, okay? So we should just bring it to attention now that if you have a mono room drum mix, this should always go dead center, okay? Because that is a overall image in mono of your drum mix and balance, all right? So that's tip number 4. All right, so your 5th and final tip, which is your bonus tip, is based around percussion. And when I say percussion, I'm talking about shaker and I'm talking about tambourine. So typically what I do is I look for the hi-hat, and if there's no hi-hat playing, I'll look for the dominant cymbal, which is either a crash cymbal or a ride cymbal. And I'll pan the shaker or tambourine the opposite side of the spectrum equal distance. So if a hi-hat is at 20 on the left, I will put the shaker at 20 on the right. Same for the tambourine, it's very simple. Now, if I have tambourine and shaker playing at the same time, I gotta decide what I wanna do. Am I gonna treat them as one instrument or I'm gonna treat them as separate instruments? And that's also very simple. If they're gonna be one instrument, I'm gonna pan them exactly the same. And then if they're different instruments, I'm going to pan them kind of what I do with the, hi-hat and then, like I said, tambourine or shaker, I would pan them completely opposite of each other. So I put tambourine at like 20 on the left and I put shaker 20 on the right, okay? So there's a lot of leeway when it comes to panning percussion. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. You just got to use your ear and you got to see what sounds right, okay? You don't want to throw off your balance. So I think looking at your cymbals is a really great way to do it because there's usually a cymbal playing at one time that's on a side somewhere, and there's usually not something else on the other side that's balancing that out. So it's very simple to put that percussion on the other side, and then you just create a balance. So there you go. It's as simple as that. All right, so that is your final tip, tip number 5. All right, so you guys should pretty much be experts now on how to pan a drum kit and how to pan percussion. However, if you do have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me and I will try to help you. All right, so if you guys end up liking this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe so I'm making this content for you and hit that notification bell to know any new videos coming out. And if you guys enjoyed this content, definitely feel free to check out my video on how to mix snare drum. And with that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later and peace out.